They say the most dangerous person in the world is a woman who has stopped fighting and started planning. Marcus Sterling thought he had it all: the high-powered job, the beautiful mistress, and the faithful wife waiting at home with his newborn son. He thought he could live a double life forever. But when he returned home after a night of passion, he didn't find a fight. He didn't find tears. He found a house stripped to the studs, a sold sign on the lawn, and a silence so loud it would shatter his entire existence. This is the story of how one man lost everything in a single sunrise, and why you should never underestimate a mother's instinct. The digital clock on the dashboard of the Mercedes GLE gleamed a soft neon blue. 4:12 a.m. Marcus Sterling killed the engine, letting the silence of the upscale suburban neighborhood wash over him. His shirt still smelled faintly of Jessica's perfume, a cloying scent of vanilla and expensive jasmine that stuck to his skin like a second layer of guilt. He rubbed his face, trying to scrub away the exhaustion. He had told his wife, Eleanor, that the merger with the firm in Chicago was running late, requiring an all-nighter at the office. It was the oldest lie in the book, but Marcus was arrogant enough to believe he had reinvented it. He grabbed his briefcase, rehearsing the tired smile he would use if Elena was up feeding the baby. "Rough night, honey. The partners were brutal. How's little Leo?" He walked up the stone path to his Georgian-style estate, the pride of his life. He had bought this house 3 years ago, when his architectural firm finally hit the 7-figure mark. It was his castle. He slid his key into the lock. It didn't turn. Marcus frowned, jiggling it. What the... He pulled the key out, checked it, and tried again. It wouldn't budge. A sudden flash of irritation spiked in his chest. Had Elena changed the locks? Was this some petty reaction to him missing dinner last week? He moved to the side of the house, intending to go through the garage, but stopped dead in his tracks. The moonlight hit the front lawn, illuminating a wooden post that hadn't been there when he left yesterday morning. It was a real estate sign. A red banner was slapped diagonally across it, in bold, aggressive letters. Sold. Marcus blinked, sure he was hallucinating from lack of sleep. He stepped off the path and walked onto the grass, his Italian leather shoes sinking into the damp soil. He touched the sign. It was real. Cold wood. Vinyl lettering. Sold? Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his confusion. He ran to the large bay window of the living room and cupped his hands against the glass to peer inside. The room was empty. Not just tidy. Empty. The custom velvet sectional sofa was gone. The antique oak coffee table, the grand piano he played on Christmas, gone. The walls were bare, stripped of the art collection he had spent 5 years curating. Even the curtains had been taken down, leaving the windows looking like hollow, skeletal eyes staring back at him. "Elena?" he whispered, his voice cracking. He ran to the back door. Locked. He picked up a heavy garden stone and, without thinking of the consequences, smashed the glass pane of the French doors. The sound of shattering glass tore through the quiet neighborhood, but he didn't care. He reached in, unlocked the latch, and stumbled into the kitchen. The echo of his own footsteps was terrifying. The kitchen island, usually cluttered with baby bottles, mail, and Elena's herbal tea, was wiped clean. The refrigerator door was open slightly, the light off, the shelves bare. He sprinted up the stairs, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Elena! Leo!" he screamed. He burst into the master bedroom. The California king bed was gone. The walk-in closet door stood open, revealing empty racks. His suits, his watches, his shoes, everything was gone. It was as if he had never lived there. But the real horror waited for him in the nursery. He ran down the hall to the room, painted a soft sage green. He pushed the door open, bracing himself to hear the soft coo of his 3-month-old son, Leo. The room was a void. The crib was gone. The rocking chair where Eleanor spent hours nursing was gone. The changing table, the diaper pail, the mobile with the spinning stars, all of it vanished. In the center of the room, on the plush carpet that was the only thing left, sat a single, small object. It was his cell phone bill. Marcus walked toward it, his legs trembling. He picked it up. It wasn't the bill itself. It was a printout of his call logs from the last 6 months. Highlighted in neon yellow were hundreds of calls and texts to one number, Jessica Vance. And clipped to the paper was a handwritten note. The handwriting was elegant, sharp, and unmistakably Elena's. The merger didn't run late, Marcus, but your time did. The house is sold. The assets are liquidated. The locks are changed. Don't look for us. You were too busy looking at her to notice I was packing. Marcus dropped the paper. The silence of the house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was a tomb. He pulled out his phone and dialed Elena. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He dialed the house landline, realizing as he did so that the phone jacks had probably been ripped out of the wall. He dialed his lawyer, Arthur Penhaligon. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "Marcus, it's 4 a.m. "Arthur, where is my wife?" Marcus screamed, pacing the empty nursery. "Where is my son? The house is empty. There's a sold sign on the lawn." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Arthur spoke again, his voice was devoid of the usual friendly warmth. It was cold, professional, and pitying. "She triggered the clause, Marcus. You signed the post-nuptial agreement 2 years ago when you started the firm. Remember? The fidelity clause." That was just legal jargon. "It was a binding contract," Arthur said. "Proof of infidelity results in the immediate transfer of marital assets to the injured party to secure the welfare of the child. She sent me the evidence yesterday morning. Photos, texts, hotel receipts. It's ironclad." "You let her sell my house?" Marcus roared, veins bulging in his neck. "It wasn't your house, Marcus," Arthur said quietly. "Technically the deed was in her name because of your business liability. She sold it to a cash buyer yesterday afternoon. The funds are already offshore." "Arthur, you have to stop this. I'm coming to your office." "Don't," Arthur said. "I no longer represent you. I represent Elena. And Marcus, if you try to approach her or Leo without a court order, she has a restraining order ready to file. Goodbye." The line went dead. Marcus stood in the center of the dark, empty nursery. The smell of fresh paint and baby powder was gone, replaced by the stale, dusty air of abandonment. He sank to his knees, the highlight on the phone bill glowing in the moonlight. He was homeless. He was alone, and the sun was just beginning to rise. To understand how a woman cleans out a 5,000-square-foot mansion in 12 hours, you have to understand Elena Sterling. Elena wasn't just a housewife, though Marcus often treated her like one. Before Leo was born, she was a logistics manager for a global shipping conglomerate. She knew how to move things. She knew how to organize chaos. And, most importantly, she knew how to spot a discrepancy in the manifest. 6 months prior, Elena had been doing the laundry. Marcus had left his jacket on the chair. Careless. He was getting arrogant. She found a receipt in the pocket. It wasn't for a hotel or a dinner. It was for a diamond tennis bracelet. Elena didn't own a tennis bracelet. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the vase across the room. She felt a cold, metallic taste in her mouth, like sucking on a penny. She put the receipt back exactly where she found it. That night, she cooked his favorite risotto. She listened to him complain about the partners at the firm. She smiled. She kissed him good night. And then, while he slept, she unlocked his phone. He had changed the password, but Marcus was a creature of habit. He used his graduation year, 1998. She found the texts, Jessica, the photos, the promises he made to this 24-year-old intern about leaving his boring life behind. Elena downloaded everything. She emailed the files to a secure, encrypted account. Then she put the phone back. The next morning, she didn't confront him. She initiated what psychologists call the grey rock method, but with a twist. She became the perfect, supportive wife, all while she was severing every tether that bound them together. She visited Arthur Penhaligon, the family lawyer. Arthur had been Marcus's father's friend, but he had a soft spot for Elena. More importantly, Arthur was a man of the law, and the post-nuptial agreement Marcus had signed, laughing, saying he'd never need to worry about it, was brutal. "If I execute this," Arthur had warned her, looking over his spectacles in his mahogany-panelled office, "it has to be nuclear, Elena. If you leave a crack in the door, he will wiggle through. He's a narcissist. He will try to destroy you." "I don't want to destroy him, Arthur," Elena had said, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. "I just want to ensure he doesn't destroy us." The plan took months. She slowly moved her personal heirlooms to a storage unit, claiming she was decluttering for the baby. She transferred her inheritance into a trust for Leo that Marcus couldn't touch. She monitored his schedule, waiting for the perfect window. That window opened when Marcus announced the Chicago merger trip. The moment his Mercedes pulled out of the driveway on that Tuesday morning, a fleet of 3 moving trucks pulled in from the opposite direction. Elena was a general on a battlefield. Living room to truck A, nursery to truck B. Everything in the office marked, "Marcus goes to the dump," she commanded. She had hired a liquidation firm to buy the furniture she didn't want. The house sale was a masterpiece of timing. She had listed it as a pocket listing, off-market, months ago. A wealthy tech CEO from Silicon Valley had been eyeing the property. She closed the deal via digital signature at 2 p.m. By 6 p.m., the house was a shell. By 8 p.m., she was at the private airfield. She looked down at Leo, sleeping soundly in his carrier. He had his father's nose, but he would have her strength. Her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. A text. "Landing in Chicago. Miss you both. Kiss Leo for me." She didn't reply. She pulled the SIM card out of her phone and dropped it into a trash can at the terminal. As she boarded the plane, she felt a phantom pain in her chest, the morning of the life she thought she would have. But as the engines roared to life, masking the sound of her own shaky exhale, she knew one thing for certain. Marcus wasn't coming home to a tragedy. He was coming home to a consequence. Marcus sat in his car until the sun was fully up. The sold sign mocked him in the daylight. Neighbors were starting to come out. People he had barbecued with. People he had impressed with his stories. He saw Mrs. Gable, the elderly gossip across the street, peering through her blinds. He couldn't face them. He reversed the car, peeling out of the driveway, and headed straight for the bank. He needed cash. He needed a hotel. He needed to hire a private investigator. He walked into the First National Bank branch with the confidence of a man who still believed this was a fixable error. He approached the teller, a young woman named Sarah, whom he had flirted with harmlessly in the past. "Marcus." "Good morning." She smiled, though she looked at his disheveled clothes with confusion. "Rough night?" "Something like that, Sarah. I need to make a withdrawal from the joint savings." "Sure thing." She typed on her keyboard. Her smile faltered. She typed again, harder this time. Then she frowned. "Mr. Sterling, I'm seeing a hold on this account. A hold? That's ridiculous. It's a joint account. Yes, but the primary account holder initiated a freeze pending a family court review, and she hesitated. The balance is zero. Zero, Marcus shouted. The security guard near the door took a step forward. I deposited a $50,000 bonus check last week. It was transferred out yesterday, sir, to a trust account. Since it's a joint account, either party can move the funds. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Check the business account. Sterling Architecture. Sarah looked uncomfortable. I can't access that, sir. You're listed as an authorized signer, not the owner. The business is registered under the Sterling Family Trust. The trust that Elena's father had set up for them when they got married to protect the family assets. Marcus had always assumed he controlled it. He had signed the papers without reading them thoroughly, too busy drinking scotch with his father-in-law. He had been a guest in his own life. I have no money, Marcus whispered. You have your personal checking, Sarah offered helpfully. Balance is $400. $400. He couldn't even pay for a week at the Ritz with that. He stormed out of the bank, his hands shaking. He got into his car and slammed the steering wheel. He needed an ally. He needed someone who was on his side. He dialed Jessica. Hey, baby, her voice purred. Back from Chicago already? I thought you were stuck in meetings. I never went to Chicago, Marcus snapped. I was at your place, remember? Whoa, cranky. What's wrong? Elena knows. She knows everything. She cleared out the house. She took the kid. She froze the accounts. There was a silence on the line. A long, calculating silence. She froze the accounts? Jessica asked, her voice losing its sultry edge. Like, all of them? Yes. I'm locked out of everything. I need to come over. I need a place to crash until I sort this out with the lawyers. Marcus, Jessica said. The sound of a lighter flicking echoed in the background. That's really intense. But my landlord is coming over today for an inspection, and my sister is staying on the couch. Jessica, I have nowhere to go. I bought you that Cartier necklace last week. And I said thank you, she replied sharply. Look, Marcus, I don't do drama. Wives, lawyers, frozen assets. That sounds like a you problem. Call me when you get your black card back. Jessica. Click. She hung up. Marcus stared at the phone. The betrayal stung, but it was nothing compared to the dawning horror of his reality. He wasn't the powerful architect Marcus Sterling anymore. He was a man with a tank of gas, $400, and a suit he had worn for 24 hours. He looked at himself in the rearview mirror. His eyes were bloodshot. His stubble was graying. Okay, Elena, he snarled at his reflection. You want a war? You got one. But he didn't know where the battlefield was. The drive to the office was a blur of adrenaline and denial. Sterling and Associates was located in a sleek, glass-fronted building in the financial district, a building Marcus had designed himself. It was the physical manifestation of his ego, sharp angles, imposing height, and intimidatingly modern. He parked the Mercedes in his reserved spot. CEO and founder, the plaque read. He touched it for reassurance. Elena could take the house, she could take the kid, but she couldn't take this. This was his genius, his sweat equity. He smoothed his wrinkled shirt, ran a hand through his hair, and strode into the lobby. He needed to project power. He needed to look like a man who was handling a minor domestic hiccup, not a man whose life had just been detonated. The receptionist, a young girl named Chloe, who usually greeted him with a bright, "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," didn't look up. She was typing furiously, her shoulders hunched. "Chloe," Marcus barked, walking past the desk. "Get Julian on the line, and bring me a black coffee. I'll be in my office." "Mr. Sterling," Chloe said, her voice trembling. She finally looked up. Her eyes were red. "Your keycard. It won't work for the executive suite." Marcus stopped. He turned slowly. "Excuse me?" "Mr. Thorne. Julian. He had security change the access codes an hour ago. He said you're to wait in the conference room, the glass one, by the entrance." The fishbowl, that's what they called it. It was where they put junior associates when they were being reprimanded. "Get Julian down here, now." Marcus didn't wait. He walked to the glass doors of the executive wing and slapped his card against the reader. A harsh red light blinked. "Access denied." He kicked the door. "Julian, open this damn door!" The heavy oak door at the end of the hall opened. Julian Thorne, his business partner of 10 years, walked out. Julian was a man of few words, a structural engineer who made Marcus's artistic visions stand up to gravity. He was usually disheveled, covered in chalk dust or blueprints. Today he was wearing a suit. He walked to the glass door but didn't open it. He stood on the other side, looking at Marcus like one looks at a rabid animal in a cage. "Open it, Julian," Marcus warned, his voice low. "I can't do that, Marcus," Julian said, his voice muffled by the soundproof glass. He pressed a button on the intercom so they could speak. "The board convened an emergency meeting at 6 a.m. We voted." "The board? I am the board. I own 51% of this firm." "You owned 51%, Julian corrected. "But you leveraged 20% of your shares last year to cover your gambling debts in Vegas, remember? You thought nobody knew." Marcus froze. He hadn't told anyone about that. "And," Julian continued, pulling a file from under his arm, "the remaining 31% is held in the Sterling Family Trust, which, as of this morning, has been frozen due to pending litigation regarding gross moral turpitude." "Moral turpitude?" Marcus laughed, a hysterical barking sound. "I had an affair, Julian. Half the clients we work with have mistresses. Since when is this a church?" "It became a problem," Julian said, his eyes hard, "when you billed your mistress's expenses to the Miller account. The hotel in Chicago? The jewelry? You expensed it as client relations. That's embezzlement, Marcus. That's fraud." Marcus felt the floor sway. He had. He had been sloppy. He thought he was untouchable. "Elena," Marcus whispered. "She sent you the books." "She sent us everything," Julian confirmed. "And she sent it to the Miller Group. They pulled the contract an hour ago. That was a $40 million project, Marcus. It's gone. We're doing damage control. Security is on their way up to escort you out." "You can't do this to me! I built this!" Marcus screamed, slamming his fist against the glass. "You designed the facade, Marcus," Julian said, turning his back. "But the foundation was rotten." Two burly security guards appeared behind Marcus. One of them held a cardboard box. "Mr. Sterling," the guard said, offering the box, "your personal effects from your desk. Please come with us." Marcus looked into the box. A framed photo of him and Eleanor from their wedding day lay face down on top of a stapler and a stress ball. He was escorted out of his own building, through the lobby where the interns stared and whispered, and onto the sidewalk. It started to rain again. He walked to his car, throwing the box into the passenger seat. He tried to start the engine. It sputtered and died. He looked at the dashboard. Remote immobilization active. Contact leasing agency. "No," Marcus groaned, hitting the steering wheel. "No, no, no." The lease was in the company's name. Julian had cut the car off. Marcus Sterling, the architect of the city skyline, sat in a bricked luxury SUV in the pouring rain, clutching a box of office supplies, with no home, No job, no money, and no way to move. He let out a primal scream that was swallowed by the indifferent city noise. Then he grabbed the photo of his wedding, smashed the glass against the dashboard, and wept. The Sunset Inn was a misnomer. There was no sunset, only the neon flickering of a pawn shop sign across the street, and it certainly wasn't an inn in the quaint sense. It was a roach motel off the interstate, the kind of place where people went to hide or to overdose. Room 114 smelled of stale cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. Marcus sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at the peeling yellow wallpaper. It had been 2 weeks. He had sold the Patek Philippe watch for $4,000, a fraction of its value, to a shady jeweler who knew Marcus was desperate. That money was his lifeline. He had spent the first 3 days drinking cheap whiskey, wallowing in a toxic mix of self-pity and rage. He drafted hundreds of texts to Eleanor, ranging from begging forgiveness to violent threats. He sent none of them because her number was still dead. He had tried to go to the police to report a kidnapping. "She's his mother, sir," the desk sergeant had said, looking at Marcus's unshaven face and rumpled suit with disdain. "And you have no custody agreement in place. She has every right to travel with her child. Unless you have proof she's endangering him." Marcus had nothing. On the 4th day, he sobered up. The rage crystallized into a cold, hard purpose. He didn't want forgiveness anymore. He wanted to win. He wanted his son. He opened the phone book. He didn't have a smartphone data plan anymore, and found a listing for a private investigator. Vince Moretti. "We find the unfindable." Vince met him at a diner. Vince was a small, wiry man, with grease stains on his tie, and eyes that darted around the room like a nervous sparrow. But he was cheap, and he was willing to work for cash. "So, the wife pulled a gone girl on you, huh?" Vince asked, chewing on a toothpick. "She kidnapped my son," Marcus corrected, sliding an envelope with $1,500 across the table. "I need you to find where she went. She used a private airfield, Teterboro. The flight logs are sealed." "Nothing is sealed if you know who to bribe," Vince grinned, pocketing the cash. "Give me 3 days." Those 3 days were an eternity. Marcus paced the motel room. He ate instant noodles made with tap water. He watched the local news on the grainy TV, half expecting to see a report about a missing socialite. But there was nothing. Elena had vanished without a ripple. When Vince finally called, Marcus ran back to the diner. Vince looked less cocky this time. He looked annoyed. "Your wife is good," Vince grunted, sliding a piece of paper across the sticky table. "She's really good." "Did you find her?" "I found the plane. It filed a flight plan for Zurich, Switzerland." Zurich? Marcus's heart sank. Switzerland. Non-extradition for certain civil disputes. Banking secrecy. "Yeah, but here's the thing," Vince continued. "The plane landed in Zurich, all right, but she didn't get off." "What?" "The manifest shows the plane landed empty. It was a decoy, Marcus. She filed a false flight plan. The plane made an unscheduled stop in Bangor, Maine, for refueling before crossing the Atlantic. Nobody got off in Zurich because she got off in Maine." "Maine?" Marcus frowned. "Why Maine? We have no connections in Maine." "Maybe that's the point," Vince said. "I tracked a rental car rented under her maiden name, Elena Vance." "No, wait. She used a different name. Elena Sterling is dead. She used a passport you probably didn't know she had. An Irish passport. Her grandmother was from Cork, right?" Marcus searched his memory. Elena had mentioned Irish heritage, but he never paid attention to her family history. It bored him. "Name on the rental was Elena O'Connell," Vince said. She drove north, then the trail goes cold. She ditched the rental in a long-term parking lot at a bus station in Portland. From there, she could be anywhere. She's in Maine, Marcus whispered. The realization hit him. She hates the cold. She hates the ocean. She always wanted to move to Arizona. She went where you wouldn't look, Vince said. Smart lady. Find her, Marcus commanded. That'll cost more, Vince said, tapping the table. I need travel expenses. I need to bribe bus ticket agents. I need another $2,000. Marcus checked his wallet. He had $400 left from the watch money. I don't have it right now. Vince stood up, buttoning his cheap coat. Then I don't have a location. Call me when you have the cash, Mr. Sterling. But a word of advice. If a woman goes to this much trouble to hide, maybe you should let her stay hidden. Vince walked out. Marcus sat alone in the booth. He was close. He knew the state. Maine. He went back to the motel. He looked at his possessions. He had nothing left to sell, except one thing. He reached into the lining of his suit jacket. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was the diamond engagement ring he had bought for Jessica. He had planned to give it to her the night he returned from Chicago, to convince her to be patient while he figured out how to leave Eleanor. Jessica had never seen it. It was worth $10,000. He stared at the diamond. It represented everything he had done wrong: the greed, the lust, the stupidity. He walked to the pawn shop across the street. How much? Marcus asked the broker, a man behind bulletproof glass. The man squinted at it. No papers, no receipt. It's an heirloom. I'll give you $2,000. Cash. It's worth 10. Take it or leave it, pal. You look like you need a hot meal. Marcus took the money. He didn't call Vince. He didn't trust Vince. He packed his single duffel bag. He walked to the Greyhound station. He bought a one-way ticket to Portland, Maine. 3 months passed. Winter in Maine was a physical assault. The wind coming off the Atlantic felt like razor blades. Marcus had never known cold like this. In his previous life, cold was something he observed from behind triple-paned glass while sipping a brandy by the fireplace. Now, it was a constant companion. He was living in a boarding house in Portland, sharing a bathroom with a fisherman and a retired line cook. He had grown a beard, not a stylish designer stubble, but a thick, unkempt mask that hid his face. He had lost weight. The tailored suits were gone, replaced by flannel shirts and heavy boots he bought at a thrift store. He went by the name Mark Stone. He worked odd jobs, day labor, unloading fishing trawlers at the docks. It was brutal, back-breaking work. His architect's hands, once used to holding fine drafting pens, were now blistered and calloused. But the physical pain was a distraction from the mental agony. Every night, he sat in the local library, using the free public computer. He became a digital ghost hunter. He scoured real estate listings in every small town in Maine. He looked for property sales that matched Eleanor's pattern: cash buys, quick closings, secluded locations. He searched for Elena O'Connell. Nothing. He searched for birth announcements. Nothing. He was losing hope. Maybe Vince was wrong. Maybe she really was in Zurich. Maybe she was in Arizona. Then, on a Tuesday in November, he made a mistake that turned into a miracle. He was looking at a local community blog for a town called Bar Harbor. It was a tourist trap in the summer, desolate in the winter. The blog was covering a local winter solstice craft fair. He was scrolling past pictures of homemade jams and knitted scarves, his eyes glazing over. Then he stopped. Photo Daruja 42. In the background of a picture focusing on a woman selling beeswax candles, there was a figure walking away from the camera. A woman in a thick grey wool coat. She was pushing a stroller. It wasn't her face. He couldn't see her face. It was the scarf. It was a distinctive scarf. Cashmere, patterned with a specific tartan design. The Sterling family tartan. Marcus's mother had knitted it for Elena the Christmas before she died. Elena had always said it was too itchy, that she would never wear it. But here she was, wearing it. Maybe for warmth. Maybe for comfort. Or maybe because she thought nobody in this God-forsaken frozen corner of the world would know what a sterling tartan looked like. Marcus zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The stroller was high-end, a bugaboo. The way she walked, head high, shoulders back, a purposeful stride. It was her. He felt a surge of electricity that almost knocked him out of his chair. "Got you," he whispered. He spent his last paycheck on a bus ticket to Bar Harbor. He arrived as a snowstorm was rolling in. The town was shuttered, the grand summer cottages boarded up against the winter. He found a cheap room above a tavern near the water. He spent a week watching. He didn't know where she lived, so he watched the choke points, the grocery store, the pharmacy, the post office. On the 5th day, he saw her. She was coming out of the island grocer. She looked different. Her hair, usually highlighted and blow-dried to perfection, was darker, pulled back in a practical messy bun. She wore no makeup. She looked tired but peaceful. She was carrying a bag of groceries in one arm and holding Leo against her chest with the other. Leo was big now. He was sitting up, looking around with bright eyes. He wore a blue hat with bare ears. Marcus stood across the street, hidden in the doorway of a closed souvenir shop. His heart hammered so hard he thought he might have a heart attack. He wanted to run across the street. He wanted to grab her. He wanted to scream, "That's my son!" But he froze. A man walked up to her. He was tall, wearing a rugged parka and carrying a stack of firewood. He wasn't a rich suit. He looked like a local, a carpenter, maybe, or a lumberjack. He smiled at Eleanor, a warm, familiar smile. Eleanor smiled back. It was a genuine smile, one Marcus hadn't seen in years. The man reached out and tickled Leo under the chin. Leo laughed. The sound carried across the snowy street, piercing Marcus's soul. The man took the grocery bag from Eleanor. He put his other hand on the small of her back. They walked together, toward a beat-up Subaru Forester parked at the curb. Marcus felt a nausea so violent he had to lean against the brick wall. Who was he? It had only been 4 months. Had she replaced him already? Or a darker thought crept in. Had she been planning this part too? Was this man part of the escape plan? Marcus watched them drive away. He memorized the license plate. He wasn't just fighting for his son anymore. He was fighting a ghost from a life he didn't even know she had. He pulled his collar up against the snow. He wouldn't confront her in the street. That was sloppy. That was the old Marcus. The new Marcus, the one forged in the freezing docks of Portland, would wait. He would find where they lived, and he would take back what was his. He followed the tire tracks in the fresh snow. The tire tracks led 5 miles out of town, winding up a narrow logging road, flanked by dense pines, heavy with snow. The Subaru Forester had struggled up the incline, its treads leaving deep, churned-up scars in the white powder. Marcus walked in them, his boots slipping on the ice hidden beneath. The cold was a physical weight now. It sat on his chest, making every breath a labor. But the fire in his gut, the toxic mix of rage, entitlement, and a twisted sense of fatherhood, kept him moving. He smelled the wood smoke before he saw the house. It wasn't a mansion. It was a cabin, a sturdy A-frame structure made of cedar, with a wraparound porch and a stone chimney puffing grey smoke into the twilight sky. It looked warm. It looked like a home. Marcus crouched behind a snow-covered woodpile, his breath misting in the air. He watched. Through the large front window, he could see the golden glow of the interior. He saw Elena walking back and forth, rocking Leo. She looked content. She looked safe. Then the back door opened. The man, the one from the grocery store, stepped out onto the porch. He was wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, despite the freezing temperature. He grabbed an axe leaning against the railing and walked down the steps toward the woodpile where Marcus was hiding. Marcus held his breath, pressing himself flat against the dark side of the logs. The man stopped 10 feet away. He set a log on the chopping block. Thwack! The sound of the axe splitting the wood was like a gunshot in the silent forest. Thwack! Thwack! Marcus studied him. He was younger than Marcus, maybe late 20s, muscular, but in a functional way, not a gym-sculpted way. He looked capable, dangerous. "Caleb, dinner's almost ready." Elena's voice drifted out from the open door. The man paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Coming, El? Just splitting enough for the night." El, a nickname, a familiarity that made Marcus's teeth grind. The man, Caleb, gathered the wood and went back inside, kicking the snow off his boots. The door shut. The lock clicked. Marcus waited. He needed to know the layout. He circled the cabin like a predator. He found the fuse box on the side of the house. A cruel smile touched his cracked lips. He didn't want to just knock. He wanted to terrify. He wanted them to feel a fraction of the helplessness he had felt standing in his empty nursery. He waited until the lights in the kitchen went out and the glow moved to the living room. They were settling in. Marcus reached into the fuse box and yanked the main breaker. The cabin plunged into darkness. Inside, he heard a gasp. Then, the man's voice. "Power's out. Probably the wind. I'll go check the generator." "Be careful," Elena said. The back door opened again. The beam of a flashlight cut through the snow. Caleb stepped out, heading toward the shed in the backyard where the generator likely was. This was it. While Caleb was distracted in the backyard, Marcus moved to the front. He tried the door. Locked. He looked at the window. He didn't want to break it and let the cold in on Leo. Some twisted paternal instinct still remained. So he used a credit card, an expired one, the only plastic he had left, to shimmy the lock on the older, wooden frame. It was a trick he had learned from a contractor years ago when they got locked out of a job site. The lock tumbled. The door creaked open. Marcus stepped inside. The heat hit him first. It smelled of pine, cinnamon, and roasting chicken. It smelled like the life he had thrown away for a cheap thrill in a hotel room. "Caleb?" Elena's voice came from the darkness of the living room. "Did you fix it already?" Marcus didn't speak. He closed the door behind him and locked it. He stood in the entryway, the fire from the hearth casting long, dancing shadows across his face. Elena was sitting on the rug in front of the fire, Leo playing with wooden blocks at her feet. She turned her head, squinting into the gloom. "Caleb?" Marcus took a step forward, the firelight finally catching his face. His beard was wild, his eyes sunken and manic, his clothes stained with salt and grime. He looked like a revenant rising from the grave. "Hello, Elena." Elena didn't scream. She didn't faint. She went rigid. Her hand instantly went to Leo, pulling the baby against her chest. She stood up slowly, backing away toward the kitchen counter. "Marcus," she whispered. Her voice wasn't fearful. It was filled with a profound, weary sadness. "How?" "You think you could hide my son from me?" Marcus rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "You steal my house, my money, my life, and you think I wouldn't come for him?" I didn't steal anything, Elena said, her voice trembling slightly but gaining strength. I took what was legally mine. You signed the papers, Marcus. You broke the contract. To hell with the contract, Marcus roared, stepping closer. I am his father. You're a stranger, Elena spat. You haven't held him since he was 2 weeks old. You missed his first smile because you were working late with Jessica. You missed his first fever because you were at a casino. You aren't a father, Marcus. You're a donor. Shut up! Marcus lunged, grabbing a heavy iron poker from the fireplace tool set. He didn't want to use it, but he needed to feel powerful. Give him to me. We're leaving. Leaving? Elena let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Look at you, Marcus. You're homeless. You're unhinged. Where are you going to take him? Under a bridge? I have plans, Marcus stammered. I'll rebuild. But I need my son. You don't need a son, Elena said softly. You need a possession. You need to win. That's all this is to you. A game you lost. Give him to me. Marcus stepped within arm's reach. Leo, sensing the tension, began to wail. Elena clutched the baby tighter, turning her body to shield him. No. Marcus reached out, his dirty hand grasping Elena's shoulder. I said, give me the... Suddenly, the front door exploded inward. It wasn't unlocked. It was kicked in. The wood splintered, sending shards flying across the room. Marcus spun around, raising the poker. Caleb stood in the doorway. He wasn't holding firewood anymore. He was holding a pump-action shotgun. The flashlight beam attached to the barrel blinded Marcus. Drop it, Caleb ordered. His voice was calm, terrifyingly steady. Marcus hesitated. This is my wife. This is my son. I said, drop it. Caleb racked the slide. Click-clack. The sound was universal. It cut through Marcus's rage and tapped directly into his survival instinct. The poker clattered to the floor. Hands on your head. Knees. Now. Marcus slowly sank to his knees. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing exhaustion of the last 3 months. Elena exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. It's okay, Leo. It's okay. Marcus looked up at the man holding the gun. Who are you? He snarled. Her boyfriend? You think you can take my place? Caleb kept the gun trained on Marcus's chest, but glanced at Eleanor. Boyfriend? That's rich. Eleanor walked over to Caleb, placing a hand on his arm. He doesn't know, Caleb. He never asked. Marcus looked between them. The eyes. They had the same eyes, the same shape of the nose. He's not my boyfriend, Marcus, Elena said, looking down at her ex-husband with pity. He's my brother. Marcus blinked. You don't have a brother. You said you were an only child. I said I was estranged from my family, Elena corrected. Because my father was an alcoholic and my mother was sick. Caleb was in the Marines. He was deployed for the first 3 years of our marriage. When he got back, you were too busy building your empire to care about meeting my white trash family. Remember? You told me not to invite them to the Christmas party because they wouldn't fit in. Marcus felt the memory hit him. He had said that. He had dismissed her entire history because it didn't fit his aesthetic. Caleb has been living in the guest house for 2 months, Elena said, helping me fix this place up, protecting us. From you. Marcus slumped. The humiliation was total. He hadn't been replaced by a lover. He had been defeated by the family he was too arrogant to acknowledge. The police are on their way, Caleb said. Silent alarm. I triggered it from the shed when the lights went out. No, Marcus whispered. No police, please. Elena, don't do this. Elena looked at him. For a second, he saw the woman who used to love him, the woman who had straightened his tie before his first big pitch. I'm not doing this, Marcus, she said quietly. You did this You drove here. You broke in. You threatened us. You wrote this ending yourself. The ride in the back of the sheriff's cruiser was a blur of flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the snow. Marcus watched the cabin disappear into the distance, a warm, glowing dot in a vast, cold darkness. He was charged with breaking and entering, stalking, and assault with a deadly weapon. Because he had crossed state lines to commit the crime, the federal authorities got involved. The legal hammer that Arthur Penhaligon had warned him about didn't just fall, it pulverized him. But the real twist, the final dagger in the heart of Marcus Sterling, didn't come in the courtroom. It came 3 weeks later in the county jail visitation room. Marcus sat behind the plexiglass, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his emaciated frame. He waited. He thought maybe Elena would come. Maybe she would offer a plea deal. Maybe she would let him see a picture of Leo. The door opened. It wasn't Elena. It was Arthur Penhaligon, his former lawyer, the man who had facilitated the destruction of his life. Arthur sat down, placing a sleek leather briefcase on the metal table. He looked older, tired. "Hello, Marcus," Arthur said. "You have some nerve coming here," Marcus spat. "Are you here to gloat?" "I'm here to close the file," Arthur said, opening the briefcase, "and to deliver a message. Elena didn't want to come. She thought it would be cruel." "Cruel? She ruined me." Arthur sighed, taking off his glasses and cleaning them. "Marcus, there is something you need to know. Something that wasn't relevant until you tried to claim custody." Arthur slid a document against the glass. It was a medical report. "What is this?" 2 years ago, Arthur began, when you and Elena were trying to conceive, you went to a fertility clinic. You remember? "Yeah. We did the tests. The doctor said we were fine." "The doctor told Eleanor she was fine," Arthur corrected. "He told you that you had a low count, but it was possible." "But that wasn't the whole truth." Marcus stared at the document. The medical jargon was dense, but the conclusion was clear. Diagnosis: azoospermia, sterile. The world stopped spinning. The hum of the fluorescent lights buzzed in his ears like a swarm of hornets. "Sterile," Marcus whispered. "No, that's impossible. Leo is my son." Arthur looked at him with a gaze that wasn't malicious, but deeply sorrowful. "Elena wanted a child more than anything. You were indifferent. You were busy. You were cheating. She knew the marriage was dying even then, but she wanted to save it. She thought a child would bring you back. Whose is it?" Marcus's voice broke. "Who is the father?" "An anonymous donor," Arthur said. "From the clinic. She did it to save your ego, Marcus. She knew if she told you that you couldn't give her a son, you would crumble. Your narcissism wouldn't handle it. So she underwent the procedure, got pregnant, and let you believe it was your miracle." Marcus sat frozen. The memories of the pregnancy flashed back. Elena's secretive doctor appointments, her vague answers, and when Leo was born, Marcus had bragged to everyone about the Sterling genes. "Look at that chin," he had said. "A true Sterling." It was all a lie constructed to protect his fragile masculinity. "She loved you enough to lie for you," Arthur said, putting the paper back. "She wanted a family with you, even if the biology wasn't yours. But then, you found Jessica. You started funneling money. You stopped coming home." Arthur stood up. "Leo isn't your son, Marcus. Not biologically. And after what you did at the cabin, he never will be legally. The judge granted the permanent restraining order this morning, and since you have no biological claim, your parental rights have been terminated. 0%. Marcus couldn't breathe. It felt like his lungs had turned to glass and shattered. "Why? Why tell me now?" Marcus asked, tears streaming down his face. "Why not just let me rot thinking he was mine?" "Because," Arthur said, pausing at the door, "Elena wanted you to know that you didn't lose your son because of the divorce. You never had him. You lost the privilege of being his father, and that was a choice you made every single day you chose yourself over them." Arthur knocked on the door for the guard. "Goodbye, Marcus." The door closed. Marcus Sterling sat alone in the sterile grey room. He looked at his hands, the hands that had built skyscrapers, the hands that had signed the checks for the Mistress, the hands that had held a poker to his wife's face. He had chased a ghost across the country. He had fought a war for a legacy that didn't exist. He closed his eyes. In the darkness of his mind, he saw the sold sign on the lawn one last time. He realized now that the house wasn't the only thing that had been sold. He had sold his soul, piece by piece, for years. And now, the bill had finally come due. He put his head in his hands, and for the first time in his life, he didn't scream. He didn't rage. He simply sat in the silence he had built, brick by brick. Marcus Sterling spent the next 5 years in a federal correctional facility. He never saw Elena or Leo again. Elena remarried. A quiet man. A local teacher in Maine who taught Leo how to fish and how to treat a woman with respect. It's a brutal lesson, but a necessary one. A house is made of walls and beams, but a home is built on trust. Marcus thought he was the architect of his life, but he forgot the most important rule of construction. If the foundation is built on lies, the collapse is inevitable. And sometimes, the people we think are weak are just holding up the weight of our secrets until they finally decide to let go. What do you think? Did Marcus deserve to lose everything, or was Eleanor's secret about the baby too cruel? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.